Welcome back. The shaft that we machined down for the bearing fit. In this video, you will see me heat the bearing up with the bearing heater and the bar that slides through the inside diameter of the bearing. And you're going to want to wear some sort of high temperature gloves to handle the hot bearing once it's heated up just right. And I do the spit test. I put some spit on my finger and I touch it to the ID of the bearing of that inner race, and once it starts to sizzle and dissolve pretty quickly, then I know the bearing is sufficiently heated up. And so in this video you're going to see me heat it onto the shaft, and then later I will use a puller to pull it off of the shaft, and I will heat it back onto the shaft again in order to show you how I will press it off the shaft in the manual press. So again, if you have any questions, you probably don't do this for your work, but this is what I do, so I like to share it with YouTube, and the interest seems to be there based off my previous machining videos, so I appreciate the views that I've been getting within the past week or two, now that the Shelby GT350 is gone. So if you have anything you want to see video-wise while I'm here working in the shop, you let me know down in the comments, and we will get going with this video. Thanks for watching. So here I'm just holding the bearing in place on the bearing fit with my gloves on, of course, because this thing is really hot, just to make sure the bearing doesn't move or slide back off the shoulder that it's supposed to be sitting against. And take note of my center drill mark in the shaft, because the point of the puller will be riding in that, the center saver bit of the puller will be riding in that center drill hole. And this is an old bearing, so don't worry about the noise the balls are making. On a new bearing, you wouldn't have that noise. So this is just an old bearing for video purposes, for demonstration, education purposes.
Okay, so I showed you how to heat the bearing onto the shaft, onto the bearing fit. So now, with the puller, or you could use the press, I'll show you how to take it off. So you take your puller, you thread it on by hand first. Make sure the jaws are grabbing both sides of the bearing. There are 3 jaw pullers, but the 2 jaw work here just fine. And you could hammer on with an impact, but sometimes you could go at it with the impact and the bearing is so tight on the shaft it won't move at all. So what you would do in that case is, let's just say I take the wrench 3/4 in this case and I go just a little bit, and to kind of simulate that, the bearing being so tight that it won't move. So if you're hammering on with impact, it'll either be so tight it won't move, or the bearing actually pop and come off of the bearing fit slightly. But what you can do is you can take a hammer and on the end of your hardened screw of your puller, you can tap the very end, just give it a good whack, and it should actually pop, and the screw should actually loosen up a little bit. Go it off the wrench. It did in fact get a little bit looser. Now this is if you don't have an impact. You could keep going at it like that, or just take your impact. Now the bearing just popped right there. You probably didn't hear it over the sound of the impact, but if I keep going, it'll come right off. Maybe you get a better view of it coming off the bearing fit right here as I go at it. So yeah. So now it'll actually go. You can actually go at it with just the wrench. Once it pops off that bearing fit, you know you're good to go. There you go. That's how to take a bearing off the bearing fit. Now, I may actually heat it back on just to show you on the press, because you can also take it off that way. Again, make sure there's no burrs on the end of the shaft to make sure the fit where the bearing's going to go is clean. That is very, very important. And these bigger bars heat the ID of the bearing up pretty fast, so make sure you watch that with your spit test. Let's take a little spit on my finger, putting it on the inner race of the bearing. And once it starts to sizzle up and disappear and evaporate, that's how I know I'm close. That's right back on. You might want to hold a little bit of pressure against the bearing, against the shoulder. But as long as you're on a level surface and the shaft you're putting it on is not like cocked down at an angle, you should be fine. And let's put it back on, wait for it to cool off, we'll take it over to the press. All right, now we're over at the press. So in order to press this bearing off of the bearing fit, we'll put the shaft down. Actually, it just fits into this section. I could actually rotate it for a bigger opening that I need, but this one appears to be doing just fine. Actually, I will, just in case it gets bound up. We don't want that to happen. So you put it in there like so. The shaft is sticking out underneath this piece, and then with the press I'm going to put something here that's smaller than the inside diameter of the bearings. That way nothing gets stuck in there, it'll actually press through. And let's see, what do I want to use? You know what, I can use this piece because about 1 inch of it is going to be mostly what I need to press this through. So I'll put on the safety glasses. I'll let down the press. And then with the big yellow handle not pictured, I will simply add some pressure. As you can see, hopefully the phone doesn't fall over, but it's starting to press through. Actually, let me bring you over here so you get a better view of what's going on. So I had to let this handle down to bring this piece out of its divot and lock position. And once I did that, I could crank this down by hand, which lowers this down. As you can see, it's got the teeth on the back that hold itself up in there. And then I have it on the piece that I'm pressing the shaft through the inner race of the bearing. A couple more clicks. One more click might be all we need. And as I press, it's going through the inner race, and the other side is coming out. And since this piece is scrap, I'm going to let it fall. Usually you would want to catch it, but I'll just let her go. There we go. And then you got to crank this guy back up. Switch hands. Once you crank it up far enough, it'll hold itself in place. But don't stand underneath it anyways. And so this piece was just barely long enough. This part of this piece was about to, basically, you know, got stopped up against the inner race, but we had just enough length to get the job done. And there you go. And unless I can think of another use for this, for videos, and this is going back to the scrap bin. All right. Thanks for watching.